Hey, welcome to the channel For the Sake of the Call. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. As always, I thank you for taking time out of your day to check out the channel. I sincerely appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, I ask that you hit the like button and subscribe. We don't take that for granted. Today I will be discussing what has been a bone or source of contention for some. It has even been an excuse for why some have chosen to refrain from pursuing a relationship with Jesus Christ. I hope by sharing a personal situation in my life, individuals who have viewed the topic from that perspective may find a better way of looking at it. With that, I'll get on with it. You've likely heard the question raised, if there is a God and He is so loving, why does He allow bad things to happen to good people? I discussed this in detail in the two-part message I entitled, If There Is a God, Why Would He... and you fill in the rest. You've likely heard the question raised with an air of anger and contempt. It's not uncommon for Christians to get hit with that question when they are attempting to discuss an individual's relationship with God. It's often the preface to a person's reasoning about why they don't believe in God or why they don't wish to take the necessary steps to initiate a relationship with Him. Honestly, I get it. It can be confusing. Many Christians might attempt to provide a reasonable response to the question by mentioning Adam and Eve and the original sin. Sin is at the heart of the matter when the question is viewed from the perspective of a holy and perfect God. Some Christians, when responding to the question, might explain how the devil planted a seed of carnal thinking into the minds of Adam and Eve. He did so by strongly suggesting they would not die if they ate of the fruit of the tree in the midst of the garden, contrary to what God had informed them. In addition, he planted a seed of carnal thinking and a seed of doubt regarding God's intentions when he told them, God knows the day you eat of it, you will be like God. From the time they took of the fruit and did eat, every member of the human race has been born with a carnal mind. And with the carnal mind comes thinking in stark contrast to God. And with the carnal mind comes selfish, self-centered, egocentric, and egomaniacal thinking that has nothing to do with God and others, which is where God desires our thoughts to be directed. A carnal mind coupled with free will inevitably produce disobedience to God, which is sin. And sin has consequences. Thus, the bottom line answer to the question of why bad things happen to good people. Sin came into the world by virtue of human choice derived from carnal thinking, and a holy God can't tolerate sin. I could proceed with a more in-depth discussion on the subject. I, for example, could provide scriptural support about how none of us are genuinely good without God. Romans 3:10 through 12 and Psalm 14:1 through 3 speak clearly about how good we are with a carnal mind and without God. But I want to offer another point for your consideration. It came to me during my midday prayer while I was contemplating what God has done for me by way of calamity in my life. I wondered what you would think about it. I wondered if you would believe my take on it. I wondered if you would believe God either orchestrated or allowed what has occurred in my life that ultimately had such a profound impact on my relationship with Him. I wondered if I should share it with you. After further thought and prayer, I concluded I would share it with you. You might find it helpful in answering questions that can be confusing. I ask for your indulgence as I share with you a personal event, a life-altering event. I grew up in a Christian home. At an early age, my brother and I sat at the seat of learning around our dining room table while my dad taught us about God and a relationship with Jesus Christ by way of the Bible. My mom did her part, among many other things, by ensuring we prayed and read our daily bread every morning before going to school. She didn't care if it would make us late. She didn't allow anything to get in the way of that. Now, if you're looking at me and wondering, yes, our daily bread was around that long ago. Actually, it came on the scene about 9 years before I was born. That's a long time. Eventually, my dad suggested we invite our friends to what we called Bible study. It started off with just a few young people and eventually grew into a large gathering of youth in our home for Bible study night. That youth group and those Bible study nights provided some amazing experiences. We witnessed young people giving their hearts to the Lord, healings, deliverances from demonic possession, spiritual gifts, and people being baptized in the Holy Spirit as evidenced by speaking in tongues. It had a profound impact on me and others. Many are serving the Lord today largely because of those experiences. In spite of all that, I lived up to the reputation of most preachers' kids. There was always a struggle and a plethora of distractions. Sure, I was committed for seasons in my life, but then I would get distracted during other seasons. For far more years than I care to admit, I witnessed that self-perpetuating cycle in my life. My brother would agree wholeheartedly that it was also revealed in his life. In fact, that cycle was obvious to an infrequent attendee to the Bible study. In the beginning, this guy was more of a friend to my brother because of the age difference. I was the youngest kid in the youth group. As I grew older, he became a friend of mine. He used to call us the Yo-Yo Brothers because we would often talk to him about a relationship with the Lord. Other times, we behaved in a manner suggestive of one who does not have a relationship with the Lord. Sadly, during those times, we weren't really any different than him. I hated when he busted our chops by referring to us as the Yo-Yo Brothers. He always followed it up with a good belly laugh. I hated it because he was right. That pattern continued to reveal itself in my life into my adult years. I often reflected back on my friend's title for my brother and me. It served to add further conviction. Even after being in my adult years for a while, I could recognize moments when that self-perpetuating cycle would attempt to rear its ugly head. When I identified it, I'd get frustrated with myself because my level of commitment was characterized by ebbs and flows, and sometimes the ebbs were significant. Well, there are 3 genetic clotting disorders on my mom's side of the family. I know that seems random. You'll understand in a minute. I had uncles who died at a young age. My mom had a heart attack at 46 and a stroke at 48. I was the lucky slob who got all 3 of the clotting disorders. One day, in the early part of the morning, I awoke to severe chest pain. We called for an ambulance. Being a nurse, I knew what it was. Upon their arrival, I informed the paramedics I was having a heart attack. Long story short, I sat in the ER for approximately 6 hours before having 2 stents inserted into my left anterior descending vessel, or what is called the widowmaker. You see, when you're relatively young and begin to develop an occlusion in one of your coronary arteries, you haven't had sufficient time to develop collateral circulation. Therefore, occlusion of that particular vessel, which is an extremely important one, generally kills you. Thank God, it didn't take me out. However, it did cause significant damage to my heart. The damage was such that it changed my life in more ways than one. Now, according to most people, that whole experience would be defined as calamity or a calamitous event. A really bad thing happened to a person who some might have characterized as a, quote, good person. Well, for the record, I wasn't that good. None of us are good without the Lord. None of us are good without the indwelling of His Spirit. And none of us will remain good unless He remains in us and our relationship continues to grow. I was serving the Lord, but I was noticing the ebbing of my commitment, like I described earlier. Here's where I get to the meat of the act. I believe the Lord allowed that to happen to gain my full attention and to rid me of the spiritual ebb and flow I had experienced in my life up to that point. I actually thank Him for caring enough to knock some sense into me. My cranium has always been thicker than most, thus the ebb and flow. Some of you are probably thinking my suggestion is absurd. Some of you are probably questioning how I could arrive at such a crazy conclusion. Still others are probably hoping I go on because they want to hear an alternative response to the question I mentioned earlier about how a loving God could allow bad things to happen to good people. I concede it can be confusing. When you look at James 1:16 through 17, you may be even more convinced of what you perceive to be the absurdity of what I have claimed and have concluded without reservation. It reads, "Be not deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom can be no variation, neither shadow that is cast by turning." The passage implies that only good things come from God. I agree. So how in the world can I conclude that He allowed my heart attack? At a superficial glance, a heart attack certainly doesn't appear to be a good or perfect gift. It doesn't appear like a gift in any shape or form. It can be confusing. But consider for one example, Joseph, the son of Jacob or Israel. His brothers grew to hate him because he had dreams about divine providence for himself, but not so much for his brothers. It seems God had a plan for Joseph. He revealed it to him in dreams. And in those dreams, it appeared his brothers weren't necessarily the recipients of the same level of divine providence. They hated him so much, they wished to kill him. Genesis 37:12 through 28 reads, "Sometime later his brothers left to tend their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel instructed Joseph, 'Your brothers are tending the flock in Shechem. Come here because I'm going to send you to them.' 'Here I am,' he responded. 'Go and see how things are with your brothers,' Israel ordered him, 'and see how things are with the flock. Bring back a report for me.' Then he sent Joseph from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph reached Shechem, a man found him wandering around in a field. So the man asked him, 'What are you looking for?' 'I'm searching for my brothers,' he responded. 'Tell me, where are they tending the flock?' 'They've already left,' the man answered. 'I heard them saying that they were headed to Dothan.' So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. Now, as soon as they saw him approaching from a distance, before he arrived, they plotted together to kill him. 'Look,' they said, 'here comes the dream master. Come on, let's kill him and throw him in one of the cisterns. Then we'll report that some wild animal devoured him and wait to see what becomes of his dreams.' When Reuben heard about it, he tried to save Joseph from their plot. 'Let's not do any killing,' Reuben told them, 'and no bloodshedding either. Instead, let's toss him into this cistern that's way out here in the wilderness. But don't lay a hand on him.' Reuben intended to free Joseph and return him to his father. As it was, when Joseph arrived where his brothers were, they stripped off the tunic that Jacob had given him, that is, the richly embroidered tunic that he was wearing. They seized him and tossed him into the cistern, but the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. After this, while they were seated, eating their food, they looked around and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with camels, carrying spices, balm, and myrrh for sale down in Egypt. Then Judah suggested to his brothers, 'Where's the profit in just killing our brother and shedding his blood? Come on, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. That way we won't have laid our hands on him. After all, he's our brother, our own flesh.' So Judah's brothers listened to him. As the Midianite merchants were passing through, they extracted Joseph from the cistern and sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who then took Joseph down to Egypt. I believe we all would agree what was done to Joseph wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a good or perfect gift either. However, Joseph was used mightily by the Lord while he lived for many years in Egypt. He found favor with the king and was placed in a seat of authority second only to the king. He and his family prospered. The divinely inspired decisions Joseph made served to provide for the growth, development, and furtherance of the children of Israel in what would become the nation of Israel. Additionally, the entire nation of Egypt prospered. In fact, the level of their prosperity was such that they saved other nations through a severe drought and continued to prosper while others declined. How? As Joseph told his brothers upon seeing them years after they sold him and after forgiving them and being reconciled with them, "Even though you planned evil against me, God planned good to come out of it. This was to keep many people alive, as he is doing now." As it regards my situation with a heart attack, was evil planned against me? Maybe. Or was it something else? You see, while battling with the ebb and flow of my commitment, while at times fighting waning spirituality, while often finding myself disappointed in my spiritual progress, while hating life on the plateau, and while on many occasions demonstrating nothing more than lukewarmness and spiritual mediocrity, while dreading continuation of the appropriate application of the title of yo-yo brother, I often cried out to the Lord to deliver me from the pattern that had revealed itself in my life for so many years. I asked him to break my hard-headedness, and he did. This was the second major time in my life when he allowed me to be broken for his name's sake. And the reason he did it is found in Hebrews 12, 5 through 12, which is in reference to Proverbs 3, 11 through 12. The passage found in Hebrews reads, "You have forgotten the encouragement that is addressed to you as sons. My son, do not think lightly of the Lord's discipline or give up when you are corrected by him. For the Lord disciplines the ones he loves, and he punishes every son he accepts." What you endure disciplines you. God is treating you as sons. Is there a son whom his father does not discipline? Now, if you are without discipline, in which all sons share, then you are illegitimate and not God's sons. Furthermore, we had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. We should submit even more to the Father of our spirits and live, shouldn't we? For a short time, they disciplined us as they thought best, but God does it for our good, so that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, for those who have been trained by it, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace. He disciplined me. You could say without hesitation or reservation, it didn't seem like a good and perfect gift. Initially, I could have asked, if there is a God and he is so loving, why does he allow bad things to happen to good people? I didn't go there. I knew what it was. I had been under his hand of discipline before. Sadly, it wasn't that unfamiliar to me. Truth be told, I never questioned him. And that's not because I'm so virtuous and pious. It's because I struggled then, but I no longer experience the same struggles now. I love him more now than I ever did before. Furthermore, it may come as a surprise to you, but I routinely thank him for loving me enough to discipline me. It resulted in an extremely positive outcome. Like the passage I read a moment ago, it produced a harvest of righteousness and peace. I am still required to contend with our three adversaries, the carnal nature, the devil and his little imps, and peer pressure. Nonetheless, I am committed and submitted to Jesus Christ. I can't be referred to as a yo-yo brother any longer. Before my friend died, he got to see that. I love the Lord. I want to live a life that is pleasing to Him. I pray for it all the time. And every day since my heart attack, I see it happening in a greater capacity and with greater frequency. I get that it can be confusing when we experience calamities of various kinds. I get that it can be confusing when you lose a job, a marriage, a loved one, maybe even a child, or you experience other stressors that rank high in their ability to produce seemingly insurmountable stress. But I encourage you to consider another question that I already answered with my particular experience. If what we perceive as bad things actually result in a positive outcome, are they still bad things? Allow me to repeat it, because it's a great question that just so happens to answer the other question. If what we perceive as bad things actually result in a positive outcome, are they still bad things? The fact is, when God turns it around for the good, I don't happen to think they're bad at all. As for me, I'm a better man than I was back then. No, on a physical level, I don't have the stamina I formerly had. And I'm not quite as strong as I used to be. I spent years in the gym. I used to be really strong. However, on a spiritual level and as it regards my final destination, I wouldn't trade it for the world. If there is a God and He is so loving, why does He allow bad things to happen to good people? I don't know what situation, if any, you're going through. If you are, you're a Christian and you're pondering over that question, please remain mindful of the scripture I read a moment ago. Sometimes God allows what appears to be bad things on the surface in order to bring about positive outcomes and the desired results. I know it can be confusing. Before you give up on Him and maybe even altogether, consider what I shared. Wait and see what happens. God bless you. Have a great week. Thank you for joining us on For the Sake of the Call. We sincerely hope and pray this and every episode is a blessing to you. At the very least, we hope and pray you find it thought-provoking. We consider it an honor to serve our Lord by serving you. If you found something of value with this episode, we ask that you comment, hit the like button, and subscribe. We also ask that you click the notification button so you can be informed of upcoming episodes. If you would like to contact us, please see the link in the description below. May God richly bless you, and may your relationship with Him grow each and every day.